Hi, and welcome to Intuitive Journey with Desiree. I am Desiree Holmes Scherini, your host. And today I'm joined by Deborah Drummond, and I'm very excited to interview her because she has quite an interesting history in business and also how she's followed her passion and her intuition. Let me just read her short bio here, and we'll find out more about her while we talk. Deborah has been an entrepreneur for close to 30 years. Her career has been based on her ability to work and communicate with people on many different levels in many different sectors. She has mastered her skill of intuitively sensing what's needed in the interactions, delivery, and closing of presentations. She has an incredible skill in speaking. Deborah has had 2 radio shows that required her to answer on-the-spot questions while on the air. She has taught to over 20,000 people lectures and presentations, and to an audience of 5 people up to 20,000, from talking to veterans to single parents to wealth accumulators and even dental hygienists. Deborah has the ability and the sensibility to be able to deliver information on the best way that it can be heard. She is a strong believer in personal development and research and is an avid reader and student of life. Deborah has been interviewed many times on web programs, radio, TV, and live on stage, and knows all too well how it feels to be interviewed. That's what makes her an incredible interviewee. She has a zest for life, a great sense of humor, and is able to bring out the best of the person she's interviewing with the most powerful way of delivering that person's message. So welcome, Deb. It's really nice that you joined me, and I'm just really happy you're here.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
Yes, it's nice to have you. And so Deb and I met synchronistically, intuitively, and I always love those connections that happen. And you're in Vancouver, right?
I am.
Vancouver, Canada. I'm in Washington, D.C. And I'm just going to tell that little story about how synchronicity leads people together for whatever reason. And maybe we'll find out more as we go on, just knowing each other. But we're Facebook friends because of what we do. And, somewhere along the way, we friended each other, but we weren't really, following each other or keeping in communication. But she reached out to me about collaborating because she's near Washington. And I responded, well, sure, it'd be great to talk to you. So we set up a time, and then we realized our times were different. And she was talking about Washington State and said she's near me. And then when I looked at her profile, I'm like, wait, she must have moved to Washington, D.C. from Vancouver and just not changed her bio. So we were talking about 2 different Washingtons and on two different coasts, really. But we were meant to connect. And so that's how we ended up here doing this interview. So I love that story. I love stories like that. So Deborah, I'm going to start with, I like to kind of go chronologically, but we can bounce around whichever way you like. So tell me about your entrepreneurship, how you began in that area.
Okay. Yes, it was a very interesting story how we met. And then in Discovery, we actually were both part of an organization together and didn't even know it, didn't cross paths. So
right.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's so nice to be on this side of it. And I think when I think about the 30 years that I've been in, who knew, right? Just who knew? But my first venture into health and wellness and becoming the business owner of my first business was, with a desire. It really was. I was very much in a search mode. When you're kind of wondering where it is. I have a great addiction for good music, and I came really from the nightclub scene, management, serving, and I just absolutely love that scene. But I think that I could paint that picture, but most people would realize after a certain point, it wasn't so attractive. I loved the music, but I'm like, this is not a lifelong career for me, not kind of where I wanted to go. And through some serendipitous events, I discovered and researched that I'm like, you know what? I really want to work with women. That was the first thing. It was one of the things I want to work with women. I actually took a career course, and they're like, oh, you'd be really great at this. And I was really interested in women's studies and the history of women and religious studies. So I actually went and signed up for a religious studies course and a women's studies course in Vancouver. Yet I was living in Montreal at that time because I just wanted to get away. I am from Vancouver. And so just before I came home to take those courses, I found out I was pregnant with my first child. So that took out the 4-year women's studies course. And ironically, the religious studies course got canceled. And I'm like, oh, well, what am I going to do? Like, what am I going to do now? I was
babies.
unemployed, pregnant, not a great position. And so here's the story. I don't eat, I eat very clean. And at that time I wasn't doing wheat, dairy, and sugar. I'm still not, but I wasn't then. And we're talking 28 years ago. And there was one restaurant in my city that
I have to say that's probably why it's hard to look at you and believe you've had a 30-year career, because you haven't been like you were 10 when you started, obviously, but go on.
Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Yeah. So there was one store that made muffins that I could eat at. And it was not, it was probably a good 45-minute drive, but I was pregnant. And I wanted one. And so I said to my partner, I want that muffin and we're going now. He's like, pregnancy wins. And as I went into that restaurant to get that muffin, as I walked out of the corner of my eye was a pink flyer and something told me to grab it. And I grabbed it and it was literally for a massage course. And I'm like, now I'm pregnant. You got to think I'm 5 months pregnant actually. And I grabbed this course and just something inside, I could just breathe. Yeah. So I went home. I had always loved to get massage, but never really had a great experience of holistic massage. I used to have this massage therapist that used to tell me all her problems while I was massaging. Not quite what I was looking for, but I didn't know the other way. I didn't know anything better. And I called this woman and I said, I'm just really drawn to your course. And we had this great conversation. And she said to me, I've never taught someone so far along in their pregnancy. There's some really holistic work that we do in the class. I really need to know if you can handle it. And I'm like, well, what is it? And she's like, well, we're going to do some rebirthing. I'm like, I actually have done rebirthing. And so we got to the point where she said, look, I'm willing to consider you for the course, but let's meet in person. I'm like, okay. Now I lived in a place called Burnaby and there was Vancouver, and where she lived in Vancouver was very close to kind of, I don't know, I always want to say the water on that side, but let me just say from a drive standpoint, it was a good solid 30, 35, 40 minutes. And so my partner was going to be working and he goes, okay, well, so we just figured out this bus route for me to take. Now I had not had a lot of experience in the area of Vancouver she was in. I remember the name of the street. That's all I remembered. I got on the bus, which was, I think, one of 2 or one of 3. And all of a sudden I realized I lost her address. I forgot her address. Now look, I didn't have a cell phone. Cell phones didn't exist. I couldn't Google and try to find her name. I didn't have a laptop or an iPad or nothing. It literally was a piece of paper that I obviously left at home. And I'm all the way down Vancouver. I don't have a cell phone, so I can call. So I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I don't even know why or how it kicked in because my intuitive abilities weren't that heightened at that point. It was the beginning of my 30-year career in holistics. The street that she lives on is as far as it is wide. I mean, it is a street that just goes on. It's like everyone's main street in there. Okay. So, I mean, it's probably 30 blocks. Yeah. And I got off, I'm like, okay, well, I think I should get off here. I got off the bus stop. I walked up to the street and I could have gone left and walked an hour or right and walked an hour. And I turned right and about 5 houses in, I go, I think that's it. Oh. Now, seriously, bizarre. I go to the door and it was it.
That's so amazing. That's so lucky. I'm smiling because around the same age, probably I did the same thing in San Diego. No cell phones in those days. My, husband had the car because where he worked was someplace else. I took the bus. I got on the, I don't know where I was. I don't know what I was doing. Got off the bus and I'm like, where am I? And I walked like 20 blocks to get home because I just knew I had to go a certain direction. So I was kind of smiling as you're telling that story. Unfortunately, it wasn't 5 houses away. It was 20 blocks through San Diego. Right. But I'm laughing because been there, done that.
Right. It was such an incredible story. And here's the thing, we met, it was, love at first sight. On the second day I took her course, I said to myself, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And I had a 27 career. 27-year career, and I doing that work opened up a million doors for me, as you know, and I will still do that work now if it's a God job. So, I shifted my business a few years ago, but if someone finds me, if they go to my massage site, and they call me, though, I'm blessed to be at that part of my life where those are God jobs. I take them because I think they're meant to be, and they're a gift. So.
Oh, that's great. So where did you go next? What came after that?
Well, I took my course. I had my daughter. Another cool serendipitous thing is because I worked in the club scene before, I used to get a lot of American money in Canada. That's, a good thing. So we put it in a separate account. I was supposed to have my daughter, and I was due, and this amazing couple was coming in to teach aromatherapy. Again, we're talking years ago, people didn't really know. And my teacher said to me, it's this much money American because they're coming from the US. I had the exact same amount in my account. And I said, I really want to take it, but I'm due to have a baby. And she's like, well, if you pay it, you got to pay it because we got to give it to them. There's no return or any refund. If you think you're going to be late a week, then, so I just risked it. I went on it, and I met this wonderful couple. It introduced me to aromatherapy. Obviously, I didn't have my daughter was 2 weeks late. Maybe she knew. And
a window of opportunity.
I was like, just wait a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I started a whole beautiful career owning an aromatherapy massage studio. I started off on my own. Having a massage studio. And then because I was so versed in aromatherapy, my teacher, who was the couple that came that weekend, ended up being my aromatherapy teachers, my Ayurvedic teachers, my chakra teachers, and all of the wonderful things. And she just said to me, if you can't teach it, you don't know it. And she, I think, chose that to me because I'm a teacher by trade. I mentorship is not it's like, ooh, I don't know what to say. It just kind of came to me because I'm a giver. Right. And so she's like, that's what I want you to do. And so I continued my studies with her, and then incorporated that into a beautiful massage company. And then not too soon after that, I was doing a massage, and I don't know who it was, but I remember massaging this gentleman's leg, and I heard a question: what would you do if you had $1 million? Now, at that point, I had a young girl, single parenting. I only had $2,000 to my name in my bank account. And I said I would start an aromatherapy home party company. And so I took my little $2,000, and because I'm a formulator, I formulated like 300 products, and somehow self-funded and self-endured building this aromatherapy direct sales home party company, what people would maybe know as Tupperware, really trying to teach people about aromatherapy and natural products and clean products, honestly, probably 15 years before the world was ready for it. And then I started a gemstone company at the same time. And I did these home party companies, just teaching people about gemstones and healing and aromatherapy. And I had those companies for 17 years. That was really the first really encompassing. So it was a very busy time.
Yeah, I love it. That it sounds like, would you say from way back, like when you were a teenager, or even, did you always feel drawn to the alternative therapies or alternative ways of, like you said, you're already a clean eater early on. So where did that come from? Was that your parents? Was that something that you just felt in touch with?
Yeah, you know what? It's a great question. I came from a very traditional family. There was no talk of health food. It was, you had, like I really always wanted, Fruit Loops for breakfast. And my mom's like, those aren't healthy. You have to have Rice Krispies, but that kind of thing. But there was
with the sugar on top.
With the sugar on top, bananas and sugar and, cinnamon toast and all that good stuff. So I came from, I didn't come from that environment. I didn't come from a healthy environment, a granola environment, or, microwaves came out. Our family had one. Food came out in tin. My mom was a single mom. We had Chef Boyardee in tins, right? So I didn't come from that, but I always, I felt very black sheepish, I felt very black sheep. I was the first entrepreneur in our whole family. I started, I used to be called a hippie, right? Like people used to call me hippie. I fell in love with unicorns before they were cool to have unicorns, like I got a unicorn tattoo when I was like 15 and hid it from my mom. And my mom used to say to me, you're always cheering on the underdog. And not to say that we are the underdog, but we certainly were the ones that had to break ground. And I think I had great quests for like pioneering. And so it was really, I was the kid that in science class, I didn't do so well in science, which is funny because I'm a geek now.
Yeah.
And my science teacher said to me, look, I want to pass you, you want to pass, right? There was a couple of classes I couldn't do, like the dissecting animals and stuff. I was like, I couldn't stomach it. So he's like, look, I know that you love rocks. Like I loved rocks. So just put together a little rock thing. And I was the kid that was picking up the rocks and the seashells that looked like hearts. And I would go on those trips with your mom and your parents, and you could like buy for $1, like the little cup of the polished stones. So I took the little
bag,
polished,
get as many as you can in there and tie it.
in there, you can in there. So I did this
still
little
do that.
report. I know, right? Me too. I did this little report on these colored stones and what they meant, and he passed me. And so I think I always had that inkling. I'll tell you though, I believe that I could trace it all the way back. And if there's one thing that drives me all the way till, my first memories, I was always comfortable in a place of service. And I think that's what really the Dharma is for me, is like just being in service. So helping people become healthier and wealthier, and teaching people how to do that. I do that together. It's just a beautiful synergy for me. But I think it's because I always want people to find the best part of themselves. And I'm not a quiet cheerleader. Like I'm not so quiet anymore because I don't have to be. But I always was like that cheerleader, or like my mom said, we used to watch boxing. Okay. I mean, some people love it, some people don't. But I remember she was like, you always vote for the underdog. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, come on, you can do it. You can do it.
Yeah. I'm like, really, as you're talking, maybe we share the same, maybe somehow we're connected as the same person, because I'm like, I really identify with what you're saying. And I remember you brought back an early memory I got of, you could get the little cardboard with the rocks glued on there, and like 9 or 12 of them, and what they were. And that was probably, I think I was 9 years old. That was probably my first rock collection. And of course now, all around my place, I'm such, I'll walk down and pick rocks up off the grass, the dirt, and I'll look at it and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. How do people not see this? They think it's a rock. Look, it's gorgeous. So I'm a rock collector, but I collect things I don't know what they are. But I also still can't resist another bag of beautiful stones. And exactly. And then, so I'm totally identifying with all these little passages in your life. So I love that. I think when we were talking, I do past life hypnosis, right? And so when somebody has this, I like to, talk about intuition. When somebody has this intuitive or natural draw to something that they don't in this lifetime seem to have a source for, I always think, I wonder what you or who you were in the past. What did you do with those stones and with those oils? And maybe someplace in there, you have this energetic memory. And so you are repeating and or expanding on that in this lifetime. So I think that's cool. You have this passion, and like sometimes we just don't know where it came from, but it sure is. We're drawn to it. So you must have been a shaman, and so with all the oils and the stones. And helping.
No, absolutely. It's funny how it's all integrated and how it is now part of, I'll tell you that one of the biggest time-consuming aspects of my businesses have been educating and educating and educating. And I remember saying, oh, if I have to teach introductory aromatherapy one more time, I'm going to die. It's like, so what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And so now a lot of that is much, it's more common. It's commonplace, right? And just like gluten-free. Like I've been gluten-free for 30 years, and people, honestly, my family used to make fun of me. And now they're like, oh yeah, oh, that's gluten-free, as if it's like, okay now, or I'll get compliments like yourself and people, and you're like, oh, so you may not look, necessarily that many years in business or what have you. And I'll tell people like, oh yeah, my girlfriend's gluten-free, or yeah, I use aromatherapy now. And so it's very common.
I did one of those cheek swab things. No, that was different, but one of those things, the haircut, where I sent it in to get analyzed about, certain things. And it was very helpful, because I was sort of like, why do I always feel crappy and bloated or whatever, and I had not tied it down. So that was useful to find out that cheese, which I love, is not necessarily my friend. So
right. Like, absolutely.
Well, that explains that, certain things. So it's really interesting, and the gluten too. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. Like a friend of mine who's very sensitive to gluten, she says she goes to Europe and she has no problem with bread. Yeah. And so it has something to do with whatever's put on the fields or such, and additives. But that's a whole nother story. So it's good.
That's a whole other show. Yeah, we could do a whole show on that.
So what are you doing now? Where are you now in your passions?
Right. So I really think that it's come together, because my experience as being an entrepreneur, also, I think being an entrepreneur at a time where it wasn't necessarily common, and also a woman entrepreneur wasn't necessarily common. So I have a great lineage around helping empower people in general, where before it was like, helping my sisters get to a place of entrepreneurship and getting okay with that, and juggling the family and what have you. So I believe I've kind of put it all together. The best way I can describe myself is probably health, wellness, and wealth. I really, that's where it comes together. I had the opportunity, I know the number, because we decided to count that up when they were putting my website together, and I've done over 30,000 treatments on people. And I feel super great to be able to help people in their health, not only just from a relaxation standpoint, but right now I really work with people from a long-term cellular level. And I've been talking cellular health on stages for a long time. So I think my love for helping people has gone really into, and we call it anti-aging, but really I call it more like life preserving. And it's optimizing where you're at. So I'm super funky about the brain, lymphatic system, mitochondria, and really helping people and educating people on the power of optimizing those, and just how that is not only good to you for your body, but for all sorts of things, particularly the brain. So the health and wellness part of it really does fall in that anti-aging sector. And so I am in a company right now. I had my companies for 17 years. I converted those companies, had this beautiful studio, and I've been working with a company that distributes, ironically, holistic, anti-aging, gluten-free, vegan products that people can use on their skin, their body, their brain, take it internally to do what? Guess what? Optimize the mitochondria, clean the lymphatic system, weight loss, all those natural aspects of one's health from a cellular level. So I've gone from, banging down the door, trying to get people to not do things, or to do things that were unusual, don't do that, and please do this. That was kind of breaking ground, to a place where I get to have this platform of having this relationship with this company, where I get to turn people onto that. And then the wealth part that comes into it is I do lots and lots of coaching and mentoring and training and teaching, not only on our podcasts and things like that, where we have vehicles for entrepreneurs, but also for people to come into my business and work with me, hang out with me. And I build a local and international team of people that share the same information about those products. And, predominantly those people that are coming in, they're looking for an extra side something in relationship to what they're doing. Or someone like myself saw something really quite big, and I've shifted over to really this being the main part of what I do for a living. And of course, as sharing information is super important, and having a platform. So having the podcast, I have a podcast where people can come and listen to lifepreneurs and entrepreneurs. And lifepreneurs is an interesting word, because people
I like that word.
Yeah. And it's people that are doing things in the world. They may not necessarily want to be an entrepreneur. They might love working for somebody else or having their career bank somewhere else, but they have the zest that you have. You're an entrepreneur, clearly, right? Putting it together and that creativity. And so they have a creative project or something that's making a big impact that we feel people need to hear about, or they need to align with them for a reason. And so that's what I'm doing now. We just published a book through that media, that media house, 20 powerful women in network marketing tell all. And
Great.
it's so it's books and podcasts, but predominantly it's really sharing the benefits of holistic health products that are going to sustain people.
And what's the name of your podcast?
The podcast is the True That Show.
True That.
The True That Show.
Is it True DAT?
True, like TRUE. True. Yeah, True That. So people come on and talk about the truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so people can just look that up and you're floating around. How else can they find you? If someone wanted to work with you personally, coaching, and so you say you coach in wealth coaching, life coaching, all sorts, like helping people find direction or whatever they're looking for. Do you specialize in particular one way or another with coaching?
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting because I have everybody can go. It's super easy. DebDrummond.com.
Okay.
So it's DebDrummond, DebDrummond.com. It's my name. So it's not Deborah, Deb.
Gotcha.
And they can go on there and they can find all sorts of lectures and coaching information. And what seems to come to me, right, are people that are looking, they're either in their career, they're super happy where they are, but they can't break the ceiling, even though there isn't one. So a lot of entrepreneurs come to me and they're like, I know I can do whatever I want to do. I know I can go to wherever I want to go. I'm scratching at my own glass ceiling. And so I'm really good at getting people over that hump. I'm also really good at working with people that kind of come in and they're like, I need something. I want something. I'm not really sure what it is. It usually probably falls in that kind of financial, different life. That kind of where they have to do that interpersonal development work. So most people come to me for the arena around business, wealth accumulation, changing paths, changing careers. I used to teach, 15 different types of massage. And I had people used to come to me, I really want to live a holistic life. I really want to have a business in this business, but I make so much money in like film industry, or I'm this, or I'm caught with that. So I help people transfer into their path, I guess.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So all this information, all your links, I will make sure I get them and put them down for people in the information that's underneath either the YouTube or the podcast, so they can find you. Is there anything else you want to share, or just tell people a last message?
Yeah. You know what? I think when we talk about intuition and following our intuition, I think that for me, I want to be transparent in that not everything that I've followed, not every piece of intuition I've gotten, I've followed. And I left a beautiful story with how I really followed my intuition, and it literally unlocked the door to a lifetime of a whole new way of living and thinking. But there's times where I haven't followed my intuition, or I've been too scared to follow my intuition, or I have a sense of something, but the denial, there's also denial, and you're like, you don't want that to be right. You want it to go this way, or what have you. And so I think that just to let people know that, there's been times where, I probably knew when I researched back into my own self that was probably not going to be the best decision, but I wanted it to be the right decision. Yeah. So there's kind of a joke between, people that are fairly intuitive. It's like, oh yeah, sometimes you're like, I knew that. Yeah. So if you don't, it's, and it's hard. It's hard sometimes to know what is your wants and what is really your intuition trying to tell you. So sometimes it's hard to decipher. And that's where having a trusted person that you can talk to, like I have a great business partner and she's amazing. And so I'm like, I'm getting this, I think I and then you get someone else's perspective that you trust. Yeah. So it's not an easy thing to learn how to trust your intuition. And you're usually going to get your you might get got punched a little bit until you nail that system down, but it's a lifelong journey. I mean, now it's pretty quick, right? But it's a lifelong journey to get there.
And I think the more you listen to it, the easier it gets to hear. So a lot of people will just squash it down and say, no, I'm in a money. There's our little reminder. I'm in a job that, you know, that's paying money. So I'm going to ignore this poll. But then, you know, what's the balance between money and living your passion, right? And ideally, if people, I think, honestly, if people follow their passion, that the money will follow it. And you're a good example of that.
Well, thank you, because I'm going through that again exactly right now. I've got a pull, and I'm super happy, and I'm doing what I'm doing, but I've been getting some pretty clear messages, and I'll just put the word out there: perfume. I'm not telling any more than that. I've got an NDA being signed, and so there's going to be a new venture that's going to come into my life. And I caught myself doing the same thing this morning. I'm like, I'm super grateful for where my lifestyle is and what my life choices have got me to so far. And if I spend some time over here, is it going to take away from that? And I literally had to stop myself going, that's hilarious. And I'm like, okay, I know, you know? So.
And you know what I always tell people that are afraid to make a shift? I say, you can always change back. You know, you can always go, yeah, I'm going back where I was, you know, like even moving out of a city or whatever, you know what, nothing's written in stone. If you don't want it, go back. And then it's like, oh, I never thought about that, because we think so like concretely that there aren't always options. So yeah, I look forward to finding out more about that when you get to share it. So that's cool. Okay. Well, Deb, thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate you being my guest. I loved hearing about you. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. And I'm just going to stop the recording. And thank you, everyone, for being here at Intuitive Journey for Desiree. And I will see you next time. Bye.